Athamaru, one of the newest ancestries within Pathfinder 2nd edition, released in the book Howl of the Wild, has the alternative name of Lokatha, which is the name of a race within Dungeons & Dragons, who have the alternative name of Gilman, which is an alternative name for another ancestry within Pathfinder 2nd edition, the Azaketi, who have resemblance to the Triton of Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. A lot of similarities going on here. Not to mention, the Athamaru look very similar to the Kuatoa of Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. That's kind of why I like this ancestry. Paizo, you cheeky little pearl diver. Now, with that being said, shall we begin? Greetings, my dear viewers. It is I, Drehon, and welcome back to Pathfinder Hero Frame, where we take a look at the different ancestries within Pathfinder 2nd edition and see what backgrounds and classes might fit with the lore of that ancestry to give us a baseline for what type of characters we can create with that ancestry. And today we are looking at Howl of the Wild for the very first time. I was able to get it just this weekend, so we can finally take a look at this new book a little bit later than most YouTubers, since they were able to get early access. Lucky them. Anywho, the Athamaru, also known as the Lokatha, are a race of fish or eel-like underwater folk. And they live in small communities, as small as 12 individuals, but as large as being in the hundreds. And the leader of these communities are known as matriarchs, and they will spend their life laying hundreds of eggs, which will become the next generation of Athamaru. And once that matriarch has stopped laying eggs or has died, another Athamaru, or several Athamarus, will rise up to try to claim the quote-unquote crown to become the next matriarch. Athamaru are autistic. Some of them will use their pheromones as a way to communicate, going on full performances using their pheromones within their own communities to be able to communicate better. But most Athamaru communities are more known for trading with the surface world, mostly using their coral jewelry, as well as being able to integrate animals into their day-to-day lives, more specifically giant eels. Now, when I was researching the Athamaru, this talent for creating art with coral had me thinking. It was a question that never came up before, but what exactly is coral? Is it a rock? Is it a plant? Well, surprisingly, according to the National Ocean Service, or National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, coral is a sessile animal, which means they are permanently attached themselves to the ocean floor, essentially taking root like most plants do. Coral actually comprise of ancient and unique partnership called symbiosis that benefit both animal and plant life in the ocean. Corals are animals because they do not make their own food as plants do. Corals have tiny tentacle-like arms that they use to capture their food from the water and sweep into their inscrutable mouths. Most structures that we call coral are in fact made up of hundreds to thousands of tiny coral creatures called polyps. I think I pronounced that correctly. Each soft body polyp, most no thicker than a nickel, secretes a hard outer skeleton of limestone or calcium carbonate that attaches either to rock or dead skeletons of other polyps. So, next time you open up your Minecraft world and build a structure using dead coral blocks, just know that you are slathering your builds with the corpses of animals. That just got unexpectedly dark. Anywho, back to the Athamaru. The 4 heritages that we get for the Athamaru are the Coral Athamaru, Hopeful Athamaru, Kaleidoscope Athamaru, and Quilled Athamaru. The Coral Athamaru have a symbiotic connection with coral, having integrated it into their person, whether that be through jewelry or other means. We actually have a couple of ancestral feats that give us more of a symbiotic relationship with coral, which is why I decided to go with the Animal Whisperer, but that was kind of a double meaning, as you also have the moray eel pets that the Athamaru are famous for. Now, we don't actually have any recommendations in Howl of the Wild for any backgrounds or classes, so I had to go over the lore to see what we could possibly pick. And there are some backgrounds that are implied, much like the Animal Whisperer. There are the artist, the merchant, the hunter, like with the Athamaru Hunter stat block that we get in the Monster Core 1. But some other backgrounds that would work are the Beast Blessed. This could tie into your coral, or could tie into your moray eel pet. The Concordance Researcher, Concordance Scout, Corandero, Deckhand, Deep Sea Diver, Elementally Infused, of course with water, Emissary, Farmhand, Field Medic, Guard, Herbalist, Junk Collector, Night Watch, Nocturnal Navigator, Plant Whisperer, Root Worker, Sailor, Scholar of Ancients, Scout, Spotter, Tide Watcher, Undersea Enthusiast, and Warrior. Now, the Guard and Warrior are also kind of implied in the lore, since some Athamaru will try to protect their communities as warriors. Now, as for classes, I can see the Bard, Druid, Fighter, Ranger, and Swashbuckler. There was Pathfinder Nexus's recommendation of having the Champion as a class for the Athamaru. I don't really see it, but I thought I would put it up here just in case we find something to connect them. Now, with that being said, let's go ahead and take a closer look at these classes and see what subclasses we can have for an Athamaru character. Starting things off with the Alchemist, The Chirurgeon and the Toxicologist seem to be the most accurate research fields that a Athamaru would take. This is because of their pheromones and, of course, the quilled Athamaru being able to fight with their quills, which could be toxic. So it sort of makes sense to go with a toxicologist. Moving on to the Barbarian. The instincts of the animal, elemental water, and the giant seem to be the closest. I picked giant because the quote-unquote hopeful Athamaru become size large. These are the Athamaru that are trying to become matriarchs of the community. So I thought having the giant instinct barbarian would make sense for these instances. Moving on to Bard, the Maestro and the Warrior are probably going to be the most common, though I think that the Zoophonia Bard, which is the newest muse found within Howl of the Wild, would also fit. Once again, going off of that coral attachment, as well as the moray eel lore that they also have. Moving on to Champion, the only cause I see for an Athamaru Champion would be the Paladin, though there are probably some cases where there will be some evil Athamaru. In that case, the Desecrator would be fine, though I don't exactly know. Maybe the Tyrant? That's a little sketchy. Moving on to our Cleric. Of course, going with the Cloistered Scholar, we do have 4 gods listed as recommendations. The first being Arastil, next being Gozre, then we have a Duke of Thunder, whose name I'm probably going to butcher here with pronunciation, Haifin, I think. Then we also have a 3-headed god, known as Skrikalis, Sritaming, and Sribaril, 3-headed god of raiding and war. So that's pretty interesting. Definitely some good recommendations for any Athamaru cleric. Now, this is to note, when an Athamaru community serves a god, they are all serving that god, not just one individual within that community. Different communities might serve different gods, but everyone in that community is serving the same god. Moving on to the Druid. The only Druidic orders that I could find that would fit with the Athamaru are, of course, the Druidic Order of the Animal, going off of the Coral and the Moray Eels, and, of course, Wave, since they are underwater. Next is the Gunslinger. I only picked this class because one of the images in Howl of the Wild shows an Athamaru holding a harpoon gun. Yeah, so I decided to go with that. For ways, however, the way of the Drifter, Sniper, and Vanguard seem to fit rather well with an Athamaru. You're probably not going to see the Gunslinger too often. I just wanted to mention it because it was funny to see that image of an Athamaru holding a harpoon gun. Moving on to Investigator. This one is also going to be one that will not come up often, but I thought I would at least mention the Investigator, more specifically the methodology of alchemical sciences. Moving on to Sorcerer. The bloodlines that are probably going to be the most common are your Elemental Water and your Genie Merid. I also put in the Worm Blessed more specifically the Brine Dragon, since it is an underwater dragon, which probably could be lording over an Athamaru community. I also put in the bloodline of the Aberrant, mostly as a reference to Dungeons & Dragons Kuatoa, which some of the Athamaru do take some design inspiration from. I just thought it was funny. But also, some of the Athamaru might take up service under a Veiled Master, so I thought I would at least mention that as well. Moving on to the Swashbuckler. This will probably be one of your more common classes along with the Fighter, but for styles, I can only see the Battle Dancer and the Fencer as an Athamaru Swashbuckler. Going off of the sort of entertainer sort of character that the Athamaru seem to portray themselves as, sometimes this is mostly just a stretch and speculation. Moving on to the Witch. This one is not brought up, but because the newest patron theme that we have is known as Ripple in the Deep, I thought I would mention it as a good patron theme for an Athamaru character. And then finally, the Wizard. Again, you're not going to be seeing too many of these. I think there will probably be one in every 3 communities, because they are indeed underwater. You're not going to be seeing too many spell books, but I do think that the arcane school of battle magic and civic wizardry would fit very well with an Athamaru character, especially since the civic wizardry arcane school is devoted to using their magic to help their communities. So I thought it would be a nice mention. I picked battle magic more so because of that god of war that we had mentioned back during the cleric section. But with that being said, that is all the time I have for you today. What did you think of the Athamaru? Let me know in the comment section below. And until next time, this has been Drehon, and I am offline.